How dare you? Good sir, how dare you?
And welcome back to another episode of Exposing Ourselves. I'm Travis Ritchie, and this is episode 46. This is the show where we expose each other to new things. Matt, a big music fan, will assign me one of his favorite music artists to listen to each week, and I, a movie buff, will give him one of my favorite films, and we come together on this podcast to discuss it all. And with me, as always, is my good friend...
Matt Runquist. Hey, Travis. This week, I watched the movie Thank You for Smoking, and you listened to the band, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs.
We sure did. This is episode 46, which does have a little, I don't know, special meaning.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
what meaning is that?
Isn't it both of our ages?
Oh, God.
Do we want to admit that?
Yeah, no, 46. Wow, that's so old.
It's not. Matt, there are older ages to be. Did you know that?
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea. It's also my dog's birthday today.
No.
Yes.
Well, happy birthday.
Rosa. Yeah, my oldest dog is 10 years old today.
Oh my goodness, that's so cute. Do you celebrate puppy birthdays?
Absolutely we do. Yeah.
What do you do?
Celebrate well, we get them a steak.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of steak? A cheap steak?
Usually like a chuck steak or whatever.
Oh, okay. That's nice.
We split it up amongst them. Yeah.
That's interesting. I think with Dot I used to do wet dog food, like a can of wet dog food was her big treat.
Yeah. Greyhounds, when they're at the track, eat raw meat all the time, so they have
They
iron.
do?
Yeah, they have iron guts.
I didn't know that.
The basis of their diet at the track is raw meat. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Interesting. Well, how was your week, my friend?
Well, short for one thing. We're taping this only 4 days after
Yes.
taping our last episode, and I've been working a lot, so there's not a whole lot to report from my standpoint. The dog is healing well from his injury last week, so that's good.
The broken ear.
The broken ear, his affect is up. He's it's getting a little itchy now, so that's no fun for him because he's definitely like shaking his head and trying to get the itchies out. What are those things called? Stitches. The stitches don't come out for another 8 days, I think. So he's got a long road ahead of him.
Itches get stitches.
Itches get stitches.
Or stitches get itches, I guess.
That's probably a little more accurate. Yeah, but we got Thanksgiving coming up. You guys will be hearing this episode after Thanksgiving, but my daughter and her affianced are coming for Thanksgiving.
Affianced.
Yeah. Well, it's a long story, but it's all public knowledge now. So
okay. Do you like this boy, or is it a boy?
He's a good dude. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Good. Well, that's what's important. All right.
For sure.
Nice. Same for me. I mean, it's been a lot of work. I did. This is interesting. At work, I got to see the Goo Goo Dolls play a song from their Christmas album from about 10 feet away.
Wow, that's incredible.
I thought you might appreciate that. So
I do appreciate that.
The song is pretty good. I would be willing to explore the Goo Goo Dolls. Of course, I'm familiar with a couple of their big songs, but I don't know that I'm really familiar with their oeuvre.
I mean, the truth is, Travis, that I only know their big songs as well. My wife might be able to put together a playlist for you. She's a little bit of a Goo Goo Dolls fan.
Maybe that'd be a good special episode.
A very special episode.
Yeah. Other than that, the big news on my end is that Hollywood is going crazy arguing over the merits and demerits of this new actor contract that is a tentative agreement, but still has to be ratified by the membership. I got my postcard with my little PIN code to vote in the mail, and I am. It's interesting. There's a lot to be said, and obviously a negotiation, didn't get everything we wanted, but it got a lot we wanted, and I think ultimately it's a better improvement than we've gotten in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But it's weird. I think I'm finally settling down on the side of we voted these people to negotiate our contract for us, and they did what they thought was the best they could, and so I think the the best option is to vote new people if you don't like the contract.
Yeah, I think, negotiations are always tough because obviously you want all of the things that you want, and people that aren't in the room can occasionally have an unrealistic idea of what is possible. And negotiation is about, not, some people say it's about making everyone unhappy, and that's not true, but it is about getting to what's possible, and sometimes that's not what we would like, and sometimes it is. So it was a long strike, and I think everybody is happy that it's over.
And it affected so many people, and I think that there was a ton of pressure being felt, and I think the pressure was not necessarily from the studios, because it's easy to resist. I mean, it's fairly easy to resist evil if you think yourself good, right?
Right.
But the other pressure was seeing the suffering of other good people, and I think that was pretty hard. But I don't know. I'm eager to get back to work, hopefully, and hopefully start auditioning again, which will be nice. I was getting a little momentum there for a little bit, so I would like to hopefully take advantage of that.
Sure.
But let's move to the meat of the episode.
Let's get into it.
Yeah. Do you want to shake things up and do?
I would love to shake things up
and do the movie first.
Sure, movie it is. Let's do it.
All right, great. Well,
Travis, tell me about Thank You for Smoking.
Thanks, I will. So Thank You for Smoking is a 2005 satirical movie. It was written and directed by Jason Reitman, who is the son of Ivan Reitman, who is, I guess by default, one of my favorite directors because he directed my favorite film, Ghostbusters. And so Jason followed in his dad's footsteps and is a fairly... I think he actually directed the newest Ghostbusters too, so he's really doing pretty well for himself. And this movie is based on a 1994 book by the same name, and stars Aaron Eckhart as the he's kind of a big tobacco spokesman who uses research, quote unquote, from an institution that he is vice president of, called the Academy of Tobacco Studies, and basically he is trying to lobby movies and stuff for product placement and stuff like that. So that's basically the gist of the movie, and it's really interesting. I don't know if it's a movie I thought I would like before I saw it, but I really ended up liking it. I love the satire of it in a great way. It's a lot like The Big Short was a satire of banking. This does the same thing for the tobacco industry and the movie industry kind of all at once. And I thought good performances from Aaron Eckhart, and the supporting cast is great. You've got everything, Maria Bello and Adam Brody, Sam Elliott, who is always a delight, Katie Holmes, who was fine, Rob Lowe, who I really, if directed well, Rob Lowe is wonderful, and William H. Macy, J.K. Simmons, all sorts of great people in this cast to give it some I don't know, weight. So I think that's all I need to say about it to set it up. What did you think of it?
Well, first, before I talk about the movie, how dare you talk smack about Katie Holmes?
Really?
I love Katie Holmes.
All right.
How dare you? Good sir, how dare you?
It's funny because I have not assigned you Batman Begins, which is one of my favorite superhero movies, and she is the weak link in that movie. So
yeah, I 100% disagree with you. I find Katie Holmes delightful whenever she pops up.
Interesting. Have you seen Batman Begins?
I have, yeah.
Oh,
Isn't Aaron Eckhart also in that?
No, Aaron Eckhart is in the next one, The Dark Knight.
Oh, okay.
He plays Two-Face. Very well, though. And yeah.
Anyways, this movie is a fascinating artifact. I don't know if it's a good movie, right? Mm-hmm. This character is magnetic, right? Really, really interesting guy. Aaron Eckhart does a really good job of taking this character who you naturally hate, right, because of his job and his role in life,
selling cancer, essentially, right?
Selling cancer and doing so in the most egregious way possible, like eyes wide open into the breach,
right,
type of thing, and making him compelling and likable, right? The thing that the thing that bothers me, right, is this is supposed to be a satire, and we're, making him likable. Yeah, it's a tough balance to strike, because you don't want to somehow give the impression that this guy is somebody that we should be like, or somebody that we should root for, but also you want to have the movie be watchable, and so you've got this sort of magnetic personality on screen, and the instinct there for somebody who's watching it is to be like, yeah, I want to see this guy more. I want to see him succeed, which is problematic at the very least, right?
Yeah,
he's an awful person doing awful things, and occasionally gets the lightest twinges of conscience. And I'm not sure if we're supposed to be crediting him for those light twinges of conscience, or if we should maybe just be like, yeah, he's terrible. Right?
Yeah.
The other thing that there's not a whole lot of movie here, right? It's almost like a day in the life of, sort of, except it's like a couple months in the life of this guy. But there's not this is not plot heavy by any stretch of the imagination.
No. The word pastiche comes to mind, and I don't know if it's an accurate word to use, but that's what kind of popped into my head when thinking about.
Yeah, there's a bunch of little vignettes. It's almost, it does feel like it was written scene by scene at times.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you're basing it off of a book, you do have kind of a guideline there, and I wonder if
Have you read the
was
book?
more of a fault. I have not read the book, but I wonder if that's a fault of the book rather than a fault of the movie script. Although you also do get the option to fix problems with the book, if you're writing it into a movie. So I guess everyone's at fault for the failings, such as they are. Yeah.
So, for me, as a viewer of this movie, it very explicitly makes the viewer complicit in the lies that he tells and the story that he's giving. And it's uncomfortable, but not in a funny way, and not in I feel convicted by this way, right? I don't pay attention to BS artists, and
it's non-judgmental for sure, right? It doesn't seem to offer any sort of judgment on Nick's career choices.
Yeah, or the rest of the Merchants of Death.
Yeah.
And he does get those shots in at Katie Holmes's character right at the end of the movie that I mean, that to me stuck out as super duper egregious, because the movie tries to have it both ways, right? It tries to have, hey, here's this really compelling dude who does this awful stuff. We're not saying it's okay he does this awful stuff, but we're also not saying it's not okay. But then at the end, when he sort of reverse jujitsu's Katie Holmes's takedown piece, that was am I supposed to cheer for that?
It's weird, isn't it?
Because I feel like a lot of people would cheer for that, and I feel like the people that cheer for that are awful people.
Right. Well, I think one of the things that I liked about this movie is it does kind of it breaks you out of a habit we have of believing what we're told, right? Because we are programmed in many ways by the types of people that are portrayed in this movie, like these people who are spinning things and providing, I don't know, lobbying information, right? That is oftentimes only loosely based in fact. And so we're told about, just imagine how many times we've been told back and forth that eggs are good and then they're bad and then they're good and then they're bad. There's somebody offering information to media in order to give us that information. And that is also true from smoking and guns and all the things that are good and bad in the world. Unfortunately, I think the bad things tend to get more money. Like, I don't know, the things that need to be sold are the bad things, right? Like, everybody, there's no lobbyist industry for, drinking water, right?
I think there's a lobbyist industry for everything, but
Well,
I understand your point. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I like about this movie is that it does jar you, hopefully, to recognize the dichotomy of this man being the quote hero of the story, right? And so I think that's interesting. I found it
Yeah.
challenging mentally, I guess.
What do you think of the way the movie treats William H. Macy's character? So he's a senator that is sort of on a crusade against tobacco, right?
Yeah.
And sort of objectively, you want to say, well, he's a good guy, but then he's sort of portrayed as very venal and self-important and smarter than everybody else, and he gets taken down a peg. And like, what do you think of the way the movie treats him?
Yeah, I think that it's so there is a perspective in this movie, right? And it's kind of got the perspective of the lobbyist, which is for good or for bad, his perspective of the senator who is trying to do good things, and think Bernie Sanders, think Elizabeth Warren, they're probably not viewed very well in the offices of these lobbyist industries. And so in that way, I think it's probably an accurate representation. Like as much as we, the public, want these crusading senators who seem to actually care about our better interests, I mean, that's not a universal viewpoint, right? And so this movie is trying to portray that other side of it. Do you know?
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I don't think you're wrong. I have a problem with a movie that treats a senator who wants to get reelected equivalently to a guy who openly refers to himself as a merchant of death and brags about how many people a week his product is killing versus the other products of killing, right? And the movie is just like, yeah, look at this buffoon, right? This senator who's trying to stop this objective evil. What a jerk.
You know what? Yeah, but you know what? I mean, that is so real. That's a real world thing. And I think that most people aren't really aware of the machinations that go on behind the scenes with lobbying and our government. So, I don't know. In that way, I found it very interesting to see, and I personally wasn't rooting for that guy Nick as a merchant of death. I was really more interested in just seeing the story. So that's interesting, I guess.
Okay, so let's talk about things I liked about this movie. It's obviously very well acted. Obviously, Katie Holmes is a shining star standing above the rest of the cast. It's really pretty. It's well shot. It's paced nicely. Like, what little plot there is doled out sort of evenly. There's never a point at which it feels rushed or unnecessarily stretched out. It goes by pretty quick. You know, I think it's an hour and a half, a little more.
92 minutes. Yep.
Yeah, it really like zipped by, which was good. I don't, because my skin started crawling a little bit, right? And I didn't want to spend too much more time with these people. So I liked all of that. Rob Lowe I think Rob Lowe is fantastic. I've never really not liked him in something. You obviously have a more complicated relationship with the guy, but
I've never not liked Rob Lowe. It's just that sometimes he is wonderful and sometimes he's just okay.
No, that's fair. That's fair. So I mean, I guess that kind of is how I feel about it. It's like, this is a well-made movie that I think maybe misses the mark when it comes to satirizing or when it comes to viewpoint. I mean, it's billed as a black comedy, and there's a lot of things in this movie that are like a little bit funny. There's not a whole lot of like guffawing.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, it's almost like an intelligent comedy where you're like, oh, that's funny, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, yes, I found myself saying, "Oh, that's funny," or like a very deliberate, like, haha, type of reaction to a lot of things rather than like laughing. So I don't know. I get what this is trying to do, and I get like it does stand out, right? This is an unusual movie. It's not really like I don't honestly know what else I would compare it to. You had one comparison.
The Big Short is the closest thing I could think of.
I've unfortunately never seen that, but
okay, noted.
Yeah, but you know, I guess maybe Wolf of Wall Street, kind of a little bit,
maybe.
Right?
I didn't like.
Less broad, right? But
yeah, and it's interesting. Wolf of Wall Street is an interesting corollary because it also is centered on this kind of despicable character, and I, for one, didn't like it. I really disliked Wolf of Wall Street because I think it was actually trying to portray him as a hero, where this movie doesn't seem to do that. I mean, it's told from his perspective. But the movie itself isn't saying, this guy's a good guy, you know?
No, it's not. I think the most it does is it kind of throws up its hands, and it's like, well, I mean, this
guy exists.
Wow, what are you going to do, you know?
Well, so let me ask you, how do you think this movie stands up? I mean, it's almost 20 years old now. It's an 18-year-old movie.
I mean, I think the messages of this movie are bang on, right? Like we've gotten a lot more of these types of people in a lot more situations in the years since then. Obviously, the movie deals with this, but this type of person kind of went away after the large tobacco settlement I think it was the end of the 90s, maybe early 2000s. It was right around the time we were graduating from college. And that really cut down on the existence of like this particular person for this particular industry. But this type of talking to obfuscate the truth is obviously far more common today in media, right, as opposed to in lobbying.
Yeah. Well, because the other thing that happened in media was in the 90s, there was a law that required truth basically in broadcasting. And it got repealed. Yeah. And so that gave rise to everything that we're experiencing now, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I guess I would say, yeah, I mean, it rings very true. I don't love that.
Yeah. There are a couple of interesting stories I have about this movie. One is that I was in it somewhere in the talk show scene where he's on the talk show and they have the cancer victim on the talk show. I was in the audience on that. I don't think you can see me. But and so that was an interesting experience, seeing like just that part of the movie. And then it was one of my early experiences doing background work, I think. And but the other thing that I love about this movie, there's the scene with Rob Lowe where he's talking with him about putting cigarettes in this movie, and they're like, and I think Nick says something like, would it be problematic to have cigarettes in an all oxygen environment? And Rob Lowe goes, oh no, we just insert a line of dialogue. Thank God we invented the whatever device. And I have used that line.
Yeah.
That's a great piece of writing advice, right? All you do is you have to address the problem that the audience has with a thing and acknowledge that it's a problem and then say, oh, but we fixed it. You don't have to figure it out, really. You just say, but we fixed that problem, you know? We fixed. So I use thank God we invented the whatever device all the time. And for that reason alone, this movie is going to stand in my pantheon of movies.
For sure.
You want to give it a rating or anything else you want to add?
I do want to give it a rating. I think you're going to be a little disappointed, but I just have a really hard time giving something like this a good rating, knowing how icky it made me feel.
But
So
what if icky was the point?
that may very well be the point, but this is my personal rating scale.
Sure.
Like this is not
Hey,
this is
I
not
get it.
objective truth about the goodness of the movie.
Okay.
But this is a 5 for me.
Okay.
It's kind of right down the middle. There are bits of it I enjoyed, but ultimately I left feeling kind of icky, and I don't want to feel icky. So,
That's fair.
how about you, Travis? What'd you think?
Oh man, I think I agree with a lot of the things you said, and I will say that I do also agree that this movie is not designed to make you feel good. It's probably designed to make you a little angry, and I think it succeeds while also being funny and entertainment, which is a kind of a hard line to travel. So I respect it quite a bit more because of, I think, for the same reasons that you disliked it. So I'm going to give it an 8. I think, yeah, it's definitely worth watching. I had a fun time watching it again. It had been at least 10 years since I'd watched it the last time, and I was happy to do it again, and probably will watch it again in the future.
All right. Cool.
Yeah. Well, Matt, tell me about the Yeah Yeah Yeahs.
The Yeah Yeah Yeahs. So we're on a little bit of a tour of the early 2000s indie alternative scene, and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs came up out of New York, very similarly to a couple of bands we've covered already. They're just a three-piece, though. They just have a singer and a guitarist and a drummer, and they produce all kinds of really great stuff. I really like just kind of the mix of like dance elements. The guitarist, because there's no bassist, he plays a lot of like really angular rhythmic sort of figures to sort of keep the beat moving. That he interacts really well with the drummer, and I really, really just enjoy the lead singer's voice, and I like this music. It's kind of right in my wheelhouse. I'm sure you probably got that sensation while you were listening to this, that like, oh, this seems like the kind of thing that Matt would like. Absolutely. It's just kind of my kind of thing, like upbeat, guitar based. I like female singers, so that's nice. Yeah. What did you think, Travis?
Well, I will tell you, Matt. So I had been familiar with the Yeah Yeah Yeahs before this, but only by name, right?
Oh,
and
okay.
I listening to the playlist you put together, I was not at all familiar with any of the songs, and so
Okay.
that was an interesting. I think I must have maybe heard, them on Saturday Night Live be interested. And I'm the type that always, I mean, knowing me, this might not be a surprise, I always skip the musical guest on Saturday Night Live.
Oh.
I never listen to them. So it's possible
Wow.
I heard Christopher Walken say, ladies and gentlemen, the yeahs, and then skipped past it and never. But I think, though, because I had heard of them, that this band was possibly a victim of expectations. So this was a pretty short playlist, and that was nice. And there is a ton of good stuff about it. But I will say the first song on it is Maps, and I was. It's funny because it starts off with this really interesting, like, super fast guitar, like just one string being plucked very quickly. And I'm like, it went on long enough for me to be like, this is going on too. Oh, it's going, where it just started playing something else right at the moment. I was like, this is too long. And it was an okay song. And I kind of was like, why did Matt put this first? He knows how I feel about first songs. Is this the best song that they have? And to be honest, I was a little disappointed. I was like, oh man, if this is the best song, and this playlist is all downhill from here, then I'm in for a ride. but it wasn't the best song by a long shot, in my opinion. I did enjoy that guitar work, by the way. I thought that even as a non-musical, non-guitar playing person, I was like, I can see how that's an impressive bit of guitar. Even just that one note being played very fast is probably very difficult to do. But I enjoyed other songs more. The most popular song on YouTube is the song "Heads Will Roll." And I liked that quite a bit more. I thought this checks so many of my boxes that we've talked about, and I say that I use that phrase, and I don't know if it's getting annoying or not. But things like the vocals being clean, the construction of the song is really deliberate and interesting, which I find enjoyable. So the music writing from this band is pretty good. I want to go back to the expectations though, because a band called the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, that's if you don't know, that's 3 yeahs, and that to me kind of puts an expectation of a lot of yeah in a piece of music. But I found that mostly this music was more like, yeah. You know? And so pleasant enough. And I was able to really appreciate the artistry of the music. I liked the singer. She was very good, very competent, not great in my mind, right? Like I feel like I've talked about like being able to see someone in karaoke do a song, and I feel like a lot of people could probably do justice to these songs in a karaoke bar, right? There was one song, and I think it was I'm not sure. I think it was Soft Shock or Y Control, where the end of the song got painful in my ears, and so I had to like it did a lot of like really harsh sounds, and I had to skip it. I had to skip to the end of the song, and it was I don't remember what that was, but that only happened the one time, and so I wasn't too upset about it, and the rest of the songs were great. The only other thing that was interesting was the last song, Sacrilege. It took me forever, because I listen to these in my pocket. I'm not looking at them. I'm not looking at the names of the songs. And it took me forever to figure out what the word she was saying over and over and over was. And I was like, what is sacrilege? What is this? Sacrilege? And then
it's
I
a new
finally
artificial
got it.
sweetener. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that was interesting. So I guess I liked it. Some of the bits were a little repetitive, not as bad as other bands that we've talked about by a long shot. I expected more than I got as far as kind of excitement. So yeah, that's what I thought. How about you?
Well, I want to talk about Maps for a minute. So Maps is, so you say Heads Will Roll is their biggest hit. If you look at like the YouTube numbers, Heads Will Roll has like 86 million views, and Maps has like 83 million views. So they're very close to one another.
The difference is negligible. Okay.
The difference is negligible, and Maps was a much earlier song, and Maps was like a huge indie hit. Like it is the song that most people who caught on to Yeah Yeah Yeahs early in their career, that's the song they know. And it's a very emotional song. It's, wait, they don't love you like I love you. Wait, they don't love you like I love you. And it's very like yearning, and it calls out to you to sort of like, get wrapped up in like the romance and the emotion of it all. And what always amazes me is like that is their song, right? Like that's the song that they end their show on, right? It's the Enter Sandman of Yeah Yeah Yeahs. Oh. And because the whole crowd sings along with the chorus, right? And that song, like I say things like nobody knows what the best song is, right? When you say, oh, you should put the best song first, and I say nobody knows what the best song is.
Yeah.
That song, which was a massive hit and has almost 100 million views on YouTube, was the third single released off of that album. Meaning there were 2 other songs on that album that the record label was like, this is the one. This is going to break through. This is going to be, this represents yes, and we should do it, right? And then finally they released Maps, and it ran away and was a huge hit. It's been used in a bunch of TV shows. It's been used in some movies. Like, it's a big song. Right.
Well, people do like songs that are repetitive, and this is that.
And so it's interesting. I put it first because you say you want their best song first, and like to me, like I like Gold Lion, I like Soft Shock, I like Heads Will Roll, but like to me, Maps is the iconic yeah song.
Interesting.
You know?
That's interesting. I did like Heads Will Roll more, and I think that for me that is it's a better song. But yeah, that's good. That's interesting. I really like. I find that so fascinating to be like when a band puts an album out, they put out singles, and I kind of haven't thought about this before, but to kind of like catch the interest of the band like in one song.
Yeah.
And so to try to, and like there are some bands that we've listened to who are, the variety of the songs are wonderful, and so one song doesn't represent all the songs. It can't.
Right. Yeah.
And so I find that practice interesting. So
yeah, it is sort of fascinating. I mean, there's a few bands that I remember this being true for. Are you familiar with the band Modest Mouse?
I feel like I've heard the name, but
yeah, they were pretty big. Came up from the indie scene. They have one of my favorite albums, and you might get to listen to it at some point. But
nice.
They released 4 or 5 albums in the late '90s that I was super in love with. And I saw them in tiny clubs, and then they released this song "Float On," which you probably have heard before, even if you don't know it for sure. You've probably heard this song before, and it was a massive hit. Played all over pop radio, all over rock radio, huge thing. It's not a very typical Modest Mouse song. Like, it doesn't sound like most of what they do. Now, they have a pretty wide variety of stuff, but it is one of those things where it's like, if Float On is what hooks you, you're not going to get more of that by buying their albums.
That reminds me of, I love Every Rose Has Its Thorn from Poison, but I am not going to be a Poison fan because of that song.
Exactly. Yeah, that's not going to be the thing. And there's a bunch of bands throughout history that have like a massive hit that's not in their wheelhouse. And as a musician myself, there's conflicting feelings about that. It's like, well, this doesn't really represent me or all of me, and now I've got to sing it every concert for the rest of my life, right?
Yeah.
But also, like, don't you feel like sort of a gift of like, hey, we did the thing and now we never have to work again,
Sure.
Like,
well, that's the dichotomy of being an actor too, right? So people talk about being typecast as an actor, and for example, the Star Trek people were like, oh, I'm only gonna get cast in Star Trek for the rest of my life, but also you're gonna get cast for the rest of your life in things. And so you'll never want for comfort, and I don't know, to my mind, if I ever had that opportunity, I'd be like, yeah, but that affords me the ability to create whatever I want. Like, I can still create. And
sort of like Daniel Radcliffe is the one that springs to mind. Is he just chooses? It sometimes feels like he's throwing darts at a dartboard for projects.
But that's a great example of someone breaking the mold, because he was like, you know what? I'm just going to do whatever I want. I mean, who was a bigger star and associated more with one role than Daniel Radcliffe? Like,
right. He grew up in it. He grew up in the role. Yeah.
And so, like, he did it. He's done a great job of breaking out of Harry Potter and doing other things. So, Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so, if you're lucky enough to be typecast or have a hit song that defines you, just enjoy the ride, man.
Well, thanks. I will keep working on that hit song thing for sure.
All right. Well, that's great. We didn't rate.
We have not rated this yet.
Well, let's do that.
What, Travis, since you're the one who this is being exposed to, I think I said that right?
Yeah.
What rating? You get to rate it first.
Boy, this is a really tricky one because I really respect the artistry of this band and the obvious talent, but it just didn't really scratch an itch for me. So my instinct would be to give them a 6, but I feel like they're worth more than that. Like, you know what? I'm gonna give them a 7, and
really?
trust that I will grow to appreciate them more.
All right. Well, that's an interesting rating, Travis. You know why? Because that's my rating as well.
Wow.
I really like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. They're very solid. They're a good member of the team, but they're not one of my favorite bands. I just really like them. So they're a 7 for me. That's my definition of a 7.
That's awesome. Great. I'm excited about it. All right. Well, let's move on to assignments. Do you know what you've got for me for next week?
Do I know what I have for you for next week? Absolutely I do, Travis.
All right.
Have you ever heard of the band Quasi?
Quasi or quasi?
Yes.
Because either way, the answer is no.
Nobody really knows exactly how it's supposed to be pronounced. Quasi. No, but it's Quasi. Is how I always pronounce it. So that's what we got. So Quasi was a band from this sort of earlier scene, like out Portland way. There's actually only 2 members of the band, Sam Coombs and Janet Weiss. Sam Coombs and Janet Weiss used to be married, but then they got divorced, and then they formed a band together. Sam Coombs plays an instrument called the Roxacord, which is like a keyboard instrument that supposedly sounds like an electric guitar, but really has its own thing going on. It almost sounds a little bit like an amplified harpsichord.
Oh. And it's not like a keytar? It's not the same thing as that?
It's not a keytar. It's like a stand-up electric piano thing.
Oh.
And then Janet Weiss is a drummer. She's more famously the drummer for Sleater-Kinney, who I have not introduced you to yet. But they were a very, very popular female punk band in the late 90s. The most famous member of which was Carrie Brownstein, who you probably know from Portlandia. She was the female member of her and Fred Armisen started the show Portlandia.
Sure.
Yeah, that's Carrie Brownstein. So she was in Sleater-Kinney. Janet Weiss was in Sleater-Kinney. But whenever she wasn't touring or recording with Sleater-Kinney, she was touring and recording with her ex-husband in Quasi.
Oh.
Quasi has released 10 albums.
Wow.
I saw them live earlier this year, and I gave you a playlist from, I think, 5 of their albums. Most of them are the ones from the 90s, but I did give you 3 tracks off of their most recent album, which was released this year. And I really like them. I think they're good. Sometimes they have a little bit of noise freakouts. I tried to avoid those songs, but I didn't listen through everything, and it doesn't bother me, so those songs don't stand out. So sometimes I forget that there's a little noise freakout in there. But I think you might like this. I'm hopeful. This is definitely one where paying attention to the lyrics helps too. He's a very clever lyricist.
Wow. Okay, that's exciting. All right. Well, for me, I want to. There's a movie I've been holding on to for a while, and it's a weird movie. Have you ever seen Cabin in the Woods?
No.
Okay. So I'm assigning this to you because you last week admonished me for not giving you enough comedies.
Yes.
But we have also established that you appreciate horror movies. And this movie is kind of a comedy horror movie.
Okay.
It's a science fiction comedy horror like
I
mix.
love a good comedy horror film. I'm a big fan of Evil Dead 2 and 3.
Oh,
so.
great. I have a couple of these in my back pocket. And this one I'm going to give to you because it's probably the most famous. It was written by Joss Whedon of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and The Avengers fame. And it's an interesting movie. It's basically, you know, a group of teens.
Wait, do you want to give this away? Am I gonna?
No. I'm just gonna set it up for you.
Okay.
A group of older teens go to a cabin in the woods. It's very much the Evil Dead 2, you know, scenario.
Okay.
And but what happens then is where it gets interesting. And so the stars of this movie are fairly interesting too, because it stars Chris Hemsworth just before he became Thor, and it has Fran Kranz, who was in. For me, he was in Dollhouse around the same time, which I thought was a really good Joss Whedon show, and also it's got Bradley Whitford, and I don't know. Bradley Whitford could do no wrong. We loved him in Get Out, and I love him in West Wing and everything else that he does. So he is a delightful element of this movie. It's also got a bunch of other familiar faces that you may like, and especially one good surprise too that made me squeal. So I'm interested to hear what you think of it, and I have a couple of strong thoughts about this movie that I'll share next week.
Awesome. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. That is, this is going to be a busy day for me because I still have to edit and post last week's episode. Then I'm going to edit and schedule this week's episode, and then I'm going to put together a shopping list for my Thanksgiving feast. So
all today?
There's lots all today. So hopefully I don't get any emails today, but hopefully I get emails in the future. And the way that you, listener, can email us is by using our email address, exposingourselvespodcast@gmail.com. Or if you really want to, you could comment on our Facebook page at Exposing Ourselves.
Yeah, please do that. Let us know what you think of these movies, if you disagree or agree with our ratings. And also, I all the time am getting people, whenever I tell somebody about the podcast, they're like, oh, you should do this. And I'm like, email us, because it's usually music, and I'm like, that's my co-host's decision, and so that's
Well, I've really enjoyed the one suggestion that we got so far, even if you did end up rating it a 2.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. But yeah, especially if you're a regular listener and you think you've got my interest pegged, and you think that there's a band that I would really love that Matt has not yet exposed me to, let us know, please. And hey, Matt.
Yeah?
Thank you for exposing yourself to me.
Well, Travis, thank you for exposing yourself to me.
Oh, my pleasure. Good night.
It's literally right outside my window.